Hello, YouTube. I figured since we had WrestleMania Night 1 that I would do a post show, kind of little podcast format for Night 1 of WrestleMania since I did go through it. I already did a predictions video where I was very snarky about it and I complained about it for the better part of 46 minutes. This post show is not going to be nearly that bad. I'm going to keep it a lot shorter, and since we're only dealing with half the matches, then we don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to go through the card of Night 1 as it went, and I'm going to talk about kind of my thoughts of the way it played out, and also going to kind of tally up how my predictions did in the first part. Definitely got some right and definitely got some wrong. And they went a couple of different ways than I would have gone, and it was a little surprising in a certain way, a little disappointing in a few instances, but I'll kind of go through that as I go through the card itself. So let's get into it here. We're going to keep it really simple. Like I said, predominantly this audio version, although I'll put something on the screen there for you. First match of the night, as they did in fact show on the graphic, it ended up being Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch. And I am happy to say that they did go with the correct move, and I'm also happy to say that it was a pretty solid match. I did enjoy it for what it was. I thought both of them did very well. The conditions were kind of interesting because it was okay weather, but it was actually kind of cool. It's one of those things where I guess if you're out there wrestling, then you can warm up a little bit. And I think the ladies here had the advantage that it was still earlier in the day, but it definitely would have cooled down later on in the evening, being an open air stadium in Philadelphia as things got cooler and cooler. So I have to think it would be a little uncomfortable. I can only imagine, and I'll talk about it in the main event. I wonder if cramping and that kind of thing kind of played into it as you get cold and it gets very uncomfortable, and ligaments and things get a little bit tight, especially as it gets a little bit chilly. So it's one of those things where I wonder if that kind of played into some of the matches and the way they went. But nonetheless, the ladies went out there and had a very good match to start off the show. Rhea Ripley did retain, so that was correct. That's one in the correct column there, and it was the right move. At the end of the day, Rhea Ripley's title reign right now is very strong. She's been booked as a very strong champion. If you're going to have somebody beat her, then I think you need kind of a plucky underdog story, or you need someone who's been built up correctly to stand directly opposed to her. Even though Becky Lynch obviously has the pedigree and they've done a lot with her as far as video packages and everything to kind of convey this idea. And they did kind of shoehorn the I want to prove I can beat you kind of thing. It's one of those things where that wasn't enough for me, narratively, to kind of carry this through. Having Becky Lynch be a 7-time champion this time around, like, why? What really is gained from it? I had that same logic with another situation here that we're going to get into, but obviously they still ended up making the change. But in this case, I think they made the right call, and it leaves you open, narratively, for you to go with Rhea Ripley to somebody else. I still have my idea that I would like to see happen, and a couple of possibilities, but it's one of those things where just build somebody else up, and when the time is right, maybe SummerSlam, maybe sooner, but you can have your big mega match with somebody that then finally defeats Rhea Ripley, ends the big title reign, and you get maximum value out of it. That's why I think really the money is if you're going to have Rhea Ripley get knocked off, especially when she's running on all cylinders. And also, I will note real quick for the entrances, having Rhea Ripley go out to the band that actually plays the song, and obviously she was really into the song and she enjoys it, kind of sings along with it and everything. I actually think it was a really good presentation and everything. Great entrance, great way to start off the show. I think it was a good call to have that as the first match out. And I think it was a good showcase for both ladies and a good start to the show. Moving ahead, we go to the 6-pack ladder match for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship, which was a bit of a misnomer. They kind of cheated on that one. So for this one, I'm going to say that I'm going to give myself half a point because they ended up doing the thing where you actually had both sets of championships on separate sections so that you could grab them individually with a ladder. So in order to win the undisputed Tag Team Championship, you'd have to claim both of them. But by having them separated, it allows you to do what you ended up doing, which was to have two different teams win each of them. As is expected by a ladder match with tag teams and all that involved, you had a ton of ladders, you had a bunch of spots. A good match for what it was. But again, to me, the tag team championships really don't matter that much. Splitting it up again means now you got twice as many of them with however many tag teams you've got between both sides of the roster. It seems kind of silly, but I understood the concept. And it did give you the ability to, as I said, split up the titles. And it gave you the chance to give Awesome Truth one set of titles. I want to say the Raw ones. And then the SmackDown tag team titles actually went to A-Town Down Under, which was my prediction because I thought that you had to win both. But in this case, since you could win one and the other, you're able to get yourself kind of both narratives. So Awesome Truth was the winner of one of the sets of the titles. And then A-Town Down Under was the winner of the SmackDown tag team titles, which good for them. At least they were able to get something out of it, so they'll be able to kind of parade around on SmackDown with their championship belts, and maybe it'll give them something to do as far as defending the title, or at least they're champions if nothing else. Austin Theory needed something, and that was kind of my logic behind having them win. And they did sort of win, but obviously Awesome Truth got the other side of the tag team titles. So half a point, I'll say, for that one, since I got it half right. Next up here, we've got the Familia grudge match, kind of tag team match with Dominic Mysterio and Santos Escobar taking on Rey Mysterio and what was supposed to be Dragon Lee, and they threw me a little bit of a curveball there by having Dragon Lee be taken out of this match and throwing in Andrade. So they did that on the go home show. That was after I had done the prediction video, which kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. I don't know if it would change my prediction, but I guess throwing Andrade in there does kind of throw a bit of a wrinkle in there. So anyway, so the quote unquote good guys won. So that's one in the wrong column. I still think narratively, I don't really see any benefit to it. Congratulations to Rey Mysterio, I guess. They were able to incorporate Jason Kelsey, and the other guy's name escapes me, as gigantic, oversized luchadors in order to kind of make this work as far as the match is concerned. There's some of your celebrity involvement there. Fine, whatever. At the end of the day, there's no harm in it, but I just think narratively, if you got Santos and you've got those guys and they're trying to build up that faction, I'm a big proponent. I'll just keep it at this just to keep it short. I'm a big proponent. If you're going to have a heel faction, they shouldn't be constantly looking like idiots. You do need to give them a little bit of momentum. And it's not just random matches here and there. They'll win something, or winning matches in the build up to it and then always losing the big match. At a certain point, you do want to let them occasionally have the big match because that's what gives them credibility. This is kind of an issue that I had with Damage Control, and I'll get to that a little later. But that's an issue I had with Damage Control where, yeah, they'd win things from time to time, but then it was sporadic. They'd win for a bit, and then they'd struggle for a bit, and then they'd win for a bit and struggle for a bit. And it was always this back and forth, and WWE does this a lot with its heel factions where they're never allowed to ride enough momentum. Now, the Bloodline is almost the extreme in the opposite direction, which for a while they were winning everything. But, there's a happy medium between those two things. A villain, a hero is only as good as the villains that you present them, and the villains have to at least be credible. The only way a villain can be credible is they have to win a reasonable amount of time, so it feels like there's danger. If there is no danger, because really the villain always loses every single time, well then how good a hero are they really? If in reality it's just, it's obvious, that the good guy's going to conquer all most of the time, but add a little danger to it. Make sure the villain at least seems credible. So, hey, there is a chance the villain can win, or maybe it's going to require a couple more rounds for this to be fully resolved. Therefore, you're not just assuming automatically at the first opportunity the real big match happens. The bad guys lose and we're done. Moving from there, we go to the Battle of the Usos for the Uso Cup. As expected, the match was fine, but who cares? It was Jey Uso that did win, so that is one in the correct column. At the end of the day, good guys win again here. Jimmy Uso didn't really gain anything, didn't really lose anything. It just kind of happened. And I guess at the end of the day, the idea here is that, Jey Uso was showing kind of remorse, and he was looking at his brother and trying to do this whole dramatic thing. And the problem is, and maybe as a person in the audience, this doesn't appeal to me very much. As I said, the whole brother versus brother thing can be done really well, and I've seen it done really well. This still feels like a scaled down bad version of it. It's a mini melodrama, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but it did nothing for me. It's just, again, I honestly, I said maybe forgot in 2 months. I might forget it in 20 minutes after I'm done this review. And that's no slight on the match, but it just, who cares? At the end of the day, like, whatever, fine. Next, we move on to kind of back-to-back disappointments here. In both instances, I got it wrong, so I'll own up to that. So in this case, we had the 6-woman tag with Naomi, Bianca Belair, and Jade Cargill taking on Damage Control. And even though, like, as I said, narratively, it would have been more interesting for me, given also that we got a match with Bayley in night 2, it would have been kind of interesting to have a little bit of a mix, make Damage Control feel like they're kind of a legitimate threat. They win something leading into the other one, which makes me a little concerned for night 2, but we'll see. But the point is that the Damage Control ended up losing this one, and it kind of played out as expected. The heavy lifting was done very much by Naomi and Bianca Belair, and Jade Cargill got to kind of stand on the side and have a couple of spots that were perfectly set up for her. Really slow motion setup for some of these spots. Very clunky, not great. She was standing around kind of posing a little bit too much and very slowly moving from one thing to another. Very little in the way of transitions. Nothing surprising if you've seen her stuff from AEW and prior. But it wasn't a great showcase to show that there had been that much development. The whole idea was she went to WWE. A lot of people were so excited about that. We knew WWE would present her as a star, and they did. As far as an entrance and everything, they got an amazing entrance. But the whole idea is, okay, fine, you're going to present her as a star, but you've also got the Performance Center. So the idea is you've had months to kind of develop something in ring for her, and I failed to see it. You're in WrestleMania, and I thought, okay, look, I'm not expecting chain wrestling, but just give me something to suggest you can string together 2 or 3 consecutive moves without hit a big power move, pose, hit a big power move, pose, and that's basically what I got. At the end of the day, of course, being a showcase for Jade Cargill, apparently, She had her moments, and then we ended it with Jaded. 1, 2, 3, and the six ladies got a WrestleMania match and a WrestleMania paycheck, but at the end of the day, as far as the match is concerned and the result, it was a throwaway. Complete waste of time, and this didn't even have to be on. This could have been on the pre-show, and it wouldn't have really mattered anyway one way or the other. Sorry to be negative, but it didn't actually advance anything. At the end of the day, that's why I don't like some of these results where it's like, yeah, this was an excuse for you to put these people on the card, which was fine. Nothing wrong with that, but it didn't go anywhere. It didn't lead to anything. And that's the problem when you throw a match together at the last minute that has nothing going behind it. Which leads me to the very next match, which has a lot of the exact same problem, which I talked about in the predictions thing. I also got it wrong because the 666-day title reign of Gunther as Intercontinental Champion was put to an end by Sami Zayn, because apparently we care about the moment, quote unquote, because WWE obsesses about the moment. Now, in my defense, I do want to say one thing. I hadn't completely followed a lot of the vignettes and things leading up into this. When I was predicting it, I was doing it based on the logic that I don't care what vignettes you do. I don't care what angle you try to play with family and friends and all that stuff. At the end of the day, Sami Zayn winning the Intercontinental Championship diminishes it. And I still hold that opinion. I think the Intercontinental Championship is now worse and further down the card, as far as I'm concerned, with Sami Zayn holding it than it was with Gunther holding it for 666 days. My biggest problem was really in the way we got there. It's not so much a reflection on Sami Zayn. And I had to look this up just to make sure I didn't get this wrong, because I wanted to make sure I got it right. And I was pretty close with what I was thinking in the prediction video, which is to say that Sami Zayn was added as part of this match for the Intercontinental Championship by winning a gauntlet match on March 11th, in the March 11th episode of Raw. That means he was in this match less than a month ago. Up until even a month ago, nobody knew who was going to be in the spot, and less than a month ago, Sami Zayn was in it as part of a gauntlet match, which several guys could have won. Any of them could have been in the spot, and it just so happened to be Sami Zayn. And then we had less than a month to shoehorn some kind of a storyline into it where he's trying to overcome the odds of he hasn't tried on this before. But he's the underdog, so here's his WrestleMania moment. And now his wife is happy, and his kid is happy, and Kevin Owens is happy. Now, the single biggest thing, by the way, that as soon as I saw it, kind of like made me roll my eyes, was just before, in the lead into the show, and they did a very good job during the WrestleMania production leading into this. They did show in the backstage where Chad Gable encountered Sami Zayn. They talked for a moment, and then he said, "You're not coming out," and he says, "No, you're going to do this on your own." And he goes, "And remember, you owe me a favor." Now, just to be clear, as soon as he said that, I, number one, rolled my eyes, and number two, I may as well have just torn out my prediction in half, because that's basically Rocky 3. That's literally the Apollo Creed training Rocky Balboa, doing kind of the training montage, very similar kind of thing, obviously much lamer, but effectively that was the idea where they was facing against Clubber Lang. And he goes, at the end of it, remember, you owe me a favor. Well, the favor, more than likely, guessing, is going to be he wants a shot at that title now that he's got off Gunther. But the thing is, Chad Gable had a whole elaborate thing, multiple matches against Gunther where he's trying to overcome Gunther, and now he sort of overcomes Gunther through Sami Zayn. And even if he is able to get Sami Zayn into an Intercontinental title match and defeats him, this is the lesser version of it. You didn't even get to defeat the real final guy. You beat the guy who beat the guy after less than a month notice, kind of thrown together just for a WrestleMania quote unquote moment, which is why I'm saying that it kind of diminishes the title. It's like, well, great. You built up this record breaking title reign. Sami Zayn, I'm going to guess, is not going to hold the title for 667 days. You don't get to immediately have another epic title reign. So this title reign is going to be a fraction of what the previous one was automatically. And on top of it, you ended this major title reign with no obvious immediate path for him to go forward other than maybe Chad Gable, question mark. That's why I wasn't a big fan of this result. And then as soon as he did it, it's like, and as I said, when I did the prediction video, as I said for this one, I expected Gunther to win. I gave my reasons, but I also said if you went the other way, I posed the question what you would do with Sami Zayn after. But I did say, I guess you could put in the thing with Chad Gable. Well, I'm guessing that's maybe the way we're going now. And if that's the case, I kind of put it out there in the prediction video, and I guess it's going to come to pass that way. So got it wrong, but still kind of had in the back of my mind that possibility. And I just feel really unfortunate that they decided to go that way. Other quick Easter egg point, I did mention that little Rocky 3 reference. I don't know if it was intentional, but it definitely came off that way. And also they mentioned Gunther as Ivan Drago in the ring from the announcers, and there's your Rocky 4 reference. And again, they're in Philadelphia, and I'm like, guys, you got to get better writers. This is really lazy writing. Maybe we should have just had Sami Zayn come out to Eye of the Tiger if you really wanted to absolutely beat everybody over the head with it. But there you go. Another big moment in Philadelphia sports history. Another great underdog defeated it, even though he's not fraction as interesting as Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa. That said, Sami Zayn is your new Intercontinental Champion. Yay. And that leads us to the most predictable match on the card, which was your main event for night one, the tag team match between Seth freaking Rollins and the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes taking on the bloodline of Roman Reigns and the final boss, The Rock, coming back to WrestleMania after many years. So let's get this over with. It played out in terms of result exactly the way that I figured it would. And I think it was a pretty obvious kind of result. It was pretty well telegraphed. You needed to have that in order for Cody Rhodes to overcome the odds in night two. Now, obviously, you could play some shenanigans with it, but I'm actually going to tell you why, even though I got that one right. So we'll put that one in the correct column, which I think puts me at 3.5 on total here points, so to speak, out of a possible 7. So like half right and half wrong. Like I said, the tag team one, I got half right, so I can't give myself a full point on that one. But, pretty close. 4 out of the 7 matches I got pretty right. And a couple of them, like I said, I wasn't a big fan of how we got there, but we got there anyway. For the main event, I thought it was going to be very predictable in terms of what we ended up with. It did play out that way. Although, my biggest concern, I guess, coming out of it is the way you did it, I think actually was very poor. And I'll talk about the result here in a second, but let's just say this. In terms of entrances, phenomenal entrances. Everybody got a great entrance. The whole final boss entrance for The Rock was very good. They had a little flaming, Brahma Bull logo for him to come out with. He came out with that People's Championship belt that he was presented during the Hall of Fame, and he kind of played that into his entrance. He had a nice jacket and everything. And so the presentation, as to be expected, was top tier. It was top-notch presentation. Everybody got to be phenomenal entrances and got the whole thing in there. The pomp and circumstance of WrestleMania was in full effect. Great. But once we got into it, the match felt like it dragged for quite a while. They did have some good moments. They played into the thing. We definitely got some boos for Cody a couple of times there because some people were cheering The Rock, obviously. The Rock is still a star. He's able to command a certain attention. And I will say that The Rock wrestled a very intelligent match given where he's at currently. In my predictions video, I was talking about the fact that you're talking about a guy who's 51. You're talking about a guy who's very large at this point. He's in movie star shape, which is to say he's huge, not exactly athletic, but he was able to hold his own on some moments. He was moving around a little bit slow, but he decided to be kind of brooding and methodical, which was very smart as far as the way he went. He seemed to be in pretty good shape in terms of cardio conditioning for in the ring. Presumably he had this big training camp beforehand, so I guess he got himself in good ring shape, and he looked the part. He looked great. But I think what was my issue here is how long this match took, given the result we were going to get, which I felt was obvious. And my bigger problem is that the way you did it, where you were so overt with the bloodline cheating, The Rock kind of holding sway over the referee and doing all that stuff, all that ham-fisted stuff. Well, by the bloodline winning, then you got bloodline rules in the main event of night two. And this is where I mean that WWE sometimes overthinks itself, because if you have so many shenanigans in night one, you could have, in my opinion, accomplished almost the same thing if you had just had Seth Rollins get hurt with the knee early, really sell the injury of the knee, thereby forcing Cody to kind of take on 2-on-1. But in this case, you had Seth Rollins participate in it a lot, despite the injury. That's going to be, I think, your excuse for the Drew McIntyre match on night two. But at the same time, since Seth Rollins was still involved for the majority of the match, Cody Rhodes was still hanging in there with the two of them together, and that resulted in the Bloodline having to use a lot of shenanigans to overcome them. Well, the problem is when you get the Bloodline rules, if we go with the original premise, the expectation that Cody Rhodes wins, well, then how incompetent is the Bloodline? They were barely able to scrape by using every advantage in the world, and then Bloodline rules is supposed to quote-unquote make it better. Well, in night two, all you're going to have is you're going to have Bloodline rules. It's going to be more overt and obvious the cheating. Great. But then at the same time, Cody Rhodes now has a night to make some phone calls and get some people to help him. If anything, it makes his life easier. Now, it would have been even easier if they'd won the match. Obviously, it would have been too easy. But still, now you know the fix is in. Now you know the whole thing's against you. So you've got two options. One, you have him overcome all the odds, even with everything stacked against you, in which case the Bloodline looks even more incompetent. But at the same time, it's stupid because Cody Rhodes couldn't overcome them with help on night one with shenanigans. So overcoming him by himself with shenanigans on night two would make no sense. Or option two, he's not by himself. He solicits some kind of help, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, somebody. I don't care who. And in reality, he gets a little bit of help, and that helps him win the championship, which is to say he didn't actually overcome all the odds. He got some help. He phoned a friend, and he was able to give himself some assistance. So I'm sitting there like, doesn't this kind of work against what you're doing? Or option 3, all the shenanigans, bloodline, everything, blah, blah, blah. It results in the bloodline winning, Roman Reigns retaining, in which case you have wasted 2 consecutive Royal Rumble wins. I'm expecting that will not occur. Number 3 is the least likely. Number 2, to me, is now the most likely. He's going to get some kind of assistance, which resulted from the way that Night 1 ended, which again, I think wasn't necessary. I think you could have just had the knee injury be the reason that suddenly Cody is kind of 2-on-1 handicap, and the bloodline could win the first night, quote unquote, clean or clean-ish, which in turn then allows them to use all the shenanigans on night 2, and that's how you overcome all the odds. But you kind of threw away a lot of the perception because of night 1. So now, if you're able to do it when you weren't supposed to be doing shenanigans, and then you have complete full reign to be able to do anything you want on night 2, well then the bloodline should win going away. And that's where I'm saying I don't think they will, and I think you kind of wrecked your own thing. So I know there was a lot of pieces there, but hopefully you understood my point. If I'm going to summarize it, here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is night 1, because of the way you did it, because you had so much stuff going into it, so much extra. And then in night 2, the expectations, you're going to have to bump it up to like an 11. You're even going to have to go even further to either have Cody Rhodes overcome the odds, or he's going to get some help, in which case, in reality, he's making it easier for himself, even though it was supposed to be more difficult. Or he overcomes everybody, and it's really stupid. And the Bloodline really sucks at being a faction because this should have been easy for them at this point, given the amount of advantages they gave themselves, and they already were able to win with the advantage on night 1. Which, as I said in the prediction video, means, and to me, still remains the case, the main event of night 1 was completely pointless. It was... The Rock should have just unilaterally said it's Bloodline rules, and then we would have skipped this whole thing. But it wouldn't have gotten The Rock in the ring, which I understand from a WWE standpoint. But he should have just said, yeah, I'm a board member of TKO. Your match against Roman Reigns is Bloodline rules. Good luck to you. Since they skipped that, we ended up with where we ended up, and now going into night 2, I still think it's a pretty obvious outcome, but I think it's going to get even more convoluted how we get there. That's my concern. My concern is I feel like night 2 just became more complicated just to get to the same result that we already kind of expected. So that's kind of my feeling on night 1. It was a bit of a mixed bag. There were some good matches in there, kind of as expected. They went away from a couple of the obvious outcomes to me that I thought would make the most sense, and they decided not to do those and went the other way just for the hell of it. And going into night 2, I think it's going to make it a little bit interesting. I expect that some of this should carry over into night 2, especially the Seth Rollins knee injury that he was selling towards the end of the match. Two other things really that I'll touch on. One of them is I'm curious, because of the way that the match on night 1 ended, I'm curious if The Rock tweaked his leg towards the end of the match, doing that people's elbow or one of the things towards it. So either he tweaked his leg or he was doing a phenomenal job selling it, because he looked like post-match, he was kind of hobbling around a little bit. So I'm curious if he managed to injure himself, which is kind of that thing that I was worried about going into it, being that he's not a young guy. He is carrying around a lot of weight with all the muscle, and he is not a spring chicken. And he was hurt himself the last time he was doing a little bit of a run, and that was almost 10 years ago in his early 40s, and now he's in his early 50s. I don't think it's going to get easier. But I will say he acquitted himself extremely well in the match, all things considered, and like I said, executed a great game plan as far as booking the match and kind of his approach to it. And the last kind of quick note, not related really to WrestleMania, but I did actually watch the Stand and Deliver NXT show prior to, and I would say congratulations to them for putting on a great show. I think they had over 16,000, which is phenomenal for an NXT show. But I gotta say this, kind of talking about what I was talking about during this review of night 1, I enjoyed the Stand and Deliver show way more. They got some cheesy acting in it and everything, but I thought everybody worked hard. I thought a lot of the matches were pretty good in terms of the result of it. And I think the results that happened on that show were way more cohesive and made a lot more sense, honestly, than what happened on this WrestleMania show. So it kind of leaves me worrying about what night 2 is going to look like, when the NXT show honestly made way more sense. But as far as spectacle and, pomp and circumstance, obviously you can't beat WrestleMania and the sheer production that they put into it. So congratulations to everybody in the production side of things. They did a tremendous job, and they did put on a hell of a show, even if some of the outcomes make me kind of roll my eyes and question the thought process behind it. But I will say, good, decent show overall. I'm kind of worried about, like I said, how it's going to lead into night 2. But we'll have to see how some of the predictions hold up as far as night 2 is concerned, now that we know what's happened with night 1. So that's it for me. A little bit of a night 1 post game here. I'll be back for some more videos coming up on the channel. We'll do these videos related to the cards. I didn't get a chance to do the EPAC one that I was talking about, so I'm actually going to record it a little bit here. I'm doing this on Saturday night into Sunday morning, so I think I'll record the EPAC one next. So we'll get this one out first, and then we'll record the EPAC one, and then we'll have that on Sunday. And then maybe we'll do a review of night 2 after that happens. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and if you did watch it and you did enjoy it more than I did, or enjoyed it less than I did, I don't know, maybe that's possible. I'd be curious to get your thoughts in the comment section. Happy to check that out. Appreciate the engagement. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.